They weren't pretending. These actors didn't just play hard men on screen. They were hard men in real life. War-tested, scarred, and often feared by their peers, they brought a level of authenticity no script could create. From battlefield veterans to barroom legends, these weren't Hollywood fabrications. They were forces of nature who carried their toughness into every scene. No stunt doubles, no safety nets, just real grit earned the hard way. This is part 2 of the toughest actors in film history. The ones who didn't need to act because they'd already survived the kind of stories Hollywood only dreams of. 1. Robert Mitchum. He didn't need to play tough. He was tough, long before Hollywood came calling. Orphaned young and raised during the Depression, Mitchum lived the life most actors only pretended to. By his teens, he was a drifter riding boxcars across the country, picking up whatever brutal labor he could find, digging ditches, working in coal mines, and even stepping into the ring as a teenage boxer under the name Jimmy Mitchum. That broken nose he wore with such ease on screen? He earned it taking real punches, but it wasn't just brawn. Mitchum's toughness came from hard living and surviving it. At just 16, he was arrested for vagrancy in Georgia and sentenced to a chain gang. That raw, first-hand experience with violence and confinement gave him an edge no studio could fabricate. By the time he stood in front of a camera, he'd already seen more grit than most war films dared to show. What separated Mitchum from other tough guy actors was how little he tried. He didn't need to raise his voice or throw fists to dominate a room. His presence did the work. Director Edward Dmytryk said, "Bob never had to prove how tough he was. He simply was." And it wasn't just talk. During the filming of The Night of the Hunter, director Charles Lofton was stunned to watch Mitchum carry actress Shelley Winters through take after take of a physically demanding scene, never showing strain. Then came the scandal that should have ended him. In 1948, Mitchum was arrested for marijuana possession, an offense that destroyed careers in that era. But Mitchum posed for the mugshot like it was a movie poster, served 60 days behind bars, and returned with his legend even bigger. The public didn't reject him. They were fascinated by him. Hollywood couldn't control him, but they couldn't afford to let him go either. He became the blueprint for the anti-hero, the brooding outsider, the dangerous loner, the man you couldn't predict. And he leaned into it with trademark indifference. His famous quote, "I have 2 kinds of acting, on a horse and off a horse." That wasn't false modesty. That was a man who knew real pain, real survival, and saw acting for what it was. Make-believe. Mitchum wasn't interested in image. He had no patience for pretenders. He drank too much, brawled often, and ignored authority on and off set. Yet behind that unruly exterior was a man rooted in authenticity. Director Josef von Sternberg once said, "There are actors who build characters, and actors who reveal themselves." Mitchum did the latter. As he aged, the fire didn't fade, it simmered. His danger became more refined, more internal. One look, one pause, and you knew Mitchum could end you without raising his voice. He wasn't Hollywood's version of tough. He was the real thing, weathered, wickedly smart, and utterly untamed. 2. Charles Bronson. Long before he delivered justice from behind a cold stare, Charles Bronson knew what it meant to suffer and survive. Born Charles Buczynski to Lithuanian immigrant parents, he was one of 15 children raised in extreme poverty in the coal mining slums of Pennsylvania. By the age of 10, he was already working in the mines, breathing in coal dust, hauling loads in near-total darkness, and growing up in a world where weakness wasn't an option. His face told the story, rugged, lined, and perpetually weathered. That wasn't makeup. It was experience. Bronson never tried to appear tough. He was forged by labor, loss, and violence. He rarely spoke about his upbringing, but when he did, he didn't embellish. "We lived with death, starvation, and misery," he once said. That kind of background makes you see the world differently. World War II hardened him further. As a B-29 aerial gunner in the U.S. Army Air Forces, he flew 25 combat missions over Japan and earned a Purple Heart after being wounded in action. Fellow servicemen remembered him as eerily calm under pressure, the kind of man who kept his head while others panicked. After the war, Bronson didn't slide into acting with ease. He worked over 50 different jobs: onion picker, short-order cook, bricklayer, and even professional boxer. When he finally broke into Hollywood, it wasn't through connections or charm, it was through raw presence. Studios didn't quite know how to cast him. His intimidating appearance often got him roles as criminals or hardened men, roles that fit all too naturally. What separated Bronson from others was the way he handled physicality on screen. He didn't fake his fight scenes. His punches had the snap of someone who knew how to hurt someone cleanly. Film historian Eddie Muller put it best: Bronson didn't choreograph violence, he executed it. There was a difference, and audiences could feel it. Actor Jan Michael Vincent recalled filming The Mechanic and being stunned by Bronson's strength. He grabbed my shirt in one scene, and I could feel how solid he was. That wasn't stage muscle, that was built from real labor. Even off-screen, Bronson didn't bluff. After receiving death threats from organized crime figures upset over his vigilante role in Death Wish, the studio offered him protection. He declined. "I've lived through worse," he said. It wasn't bravado, it was perspective. From someone who had flown into enemy fire and crawled out of coal mines, Bronson didn't play the Hollywood game. He avoided interviews, shunned parties, and was openly dismissive of fame. Director Michael Winner, who worked with him multiple times, once said, "Charles didn't act tough. He was tough. He didn't need to say much. You felt it just being in the same room." For Bronson, acting was simply another job, a quieter version of survival. While others rehearsed menace, he simply brought the same unshakable force that had carried him through war, poverty, and everything in between. You can't fake that kind of presence, and Bronson never had to try. 3. Clint Eastwood. He didn't need to shout or throw punches to prove his presence. He simply existed, and that was enough. With a cold squint and measured silence, he became the embodiment of quiet menace. But Eastwood's toughness didn't start on screen. As a young man, he survived a plane crash and swam several miles through shark-infested waters, an event he rarely mentioned, not for drama, but because, to him, surviving was expected. In Hollywood, Eastwood operated on his own terms. As both actor and director, he demanded discipline and precision. He wasn't interested in rehearsing emotion. He embodied it. One take was often all you got. You met his standard, or you moved on. His roles, loner gunslingers, battle-hardened cops, weren't far from the man behind them. He didn't imitate strength, he radiated it. Off-screen, he avoided the spotlight, ignored Hollywood's politics, and quietly built an empire of grit and control. Eastwood didn't follow trends. He set them, and in doing so, he redefined what it meant to be dangerous, with nothing more than a stare, a pause, and total command. 4. Sean Connery. Before the tuxedos and martinis, Sean Connery was just a kid from the rough streets of Edinburgh, fighting to survive. He polished coffins, worked as a lifeguard, and built a body through hard labor, not for show, but out of necessity. A former bodybuilder and nightclub bouncer, Connery didn't learn toughness in front of a camera. He earned it throwing real punches. There's a famous account of Connery taking on multiple gang members outside a theater and walking away without a scratch. On set, he brought that same unshakable presence. Directors, producers, even studio heads knew better than to challenge him lightly. As Bond, he redefined dangerous charm. Off-screen, the edge was sharper. Connery lived by his own code: old school, unflinching, and unapologetic. Even as he aged into legend, the fire never left. His presence remained powerful, his past etched into every word and stare. Connery didn't play alpha, he was one. 5. James Cagney. At just 5 feet 5, James Cagney wasn't built like a bruiser, but anyone who underestimated him quickly learned their mistake. Raised on the unforgiving streets of Manhattan's Lower East Side, Cagney didn't learn to fight for sport, he learned it to survive. In a neighborhood where fists settled disputes and gangs ruled the corners, being small meant being fast, smart, and unafraid. Cagney became an accomplished amateur boxer long before he ever stood under studio lights. His real-life street experience shaped not only his survival, but also his unforgettable screen presence. Those snappy jabs, lightning-fast reactions, and explosive bursts of violence in his movies weren't stylized choreography. They were born from real scraps on sidewalks. Director Raoul Walsh once said, "Jimmy knew how to throw a punch better than any actor I ever worked with, because he'd thrown plenty of real ones." But Cagney's physicality went far beyond fists. Before acting, he was a trained dancer. His sense of rhythm, footwork, and control gave him unmatched on-screen fluidity. That rare blend of grace and ferocity gave his fight scenes a unique edge. They weren't just brutal, they were precise. His commitment to realism could catch co-stars off guard. During the filming of The Public Enemy, Actress Mae Clarke famously took a grapefruit to the face, a moment Cagney didn't fake. The shocked reaction was real, and it wasn't the only time he let a punch land a little too close for comfort. His co-stars quickly learned to respect both his technique and unpredictability. Despite often playing mobsters, Cagney was no Hollywood tough guy cliché. Off camera, he was known as quiet, private, and loyal, but not someone to mess with. Bob Hope once joked, "Jimmy was the kind of guy who'd knock you flat, then help you up and buy you a drink." Unlike actors who built a tough image, Cagney never bragged. But in a rare 1973 interview, he gave a glimpse into the mindset behind that hard edge. "When you're my size and grow up where I did, you either learn how to handle yourself or you learn how to fall. I preferred staying on my feet." James Cagney didn't play a tough guy. He was one, compact, fast, and forged by the kind of street life that leaves lasting marks. Hollywood gave him scripts, but it was New York that gave him his edge. 6. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando didn't follow Hollywood. He disrupted it. With method acting as his weapon, he blurred the line between performance and reality until no one, not even his directors, knew what was coming next. Brando wasn't a street fighter or a stuntman. His danger was deeper, psychological, volatile, and impossible to predict. He didn't just play roles, he became them. From a streetcar named Desire to The Godfather, Brando brought a raw, unsettling intensity that left audiences mesmerized and filmmakers rattled. Directors learned quickly. Brando didn't take direction. He took over. His charm was electric, his fury sudden. One look could elevate a scene or burn it to the ground. Off-screen, he was just as untamed. He bought a private island, withdrew from Hollywood, and surrounded himself with mystery and chaos. His body changed, his moods shifted, but his brilliance never dulled. By the time he arrived on the set of Apocalypse Now, overweight and unpredictable, he was less a man than a force of nature. Director Francis Ford Coppola put it best. Directing Brando was like trying to direct a hurricane. Brando wasn't interested in being understood, and that made him unforgettable. 7. Charlton Heston. He wasn't just built for epic roles, he lived them. Before the costumes and grand speeches, Heston served as an aerial gunner in World War II, flying dangerous missions in a B-25 bomber. He rarely talked about it, but when he did, it was clear he wasn't romanticizing anything. "When you're in a B-25 at 15,000 feet and people are shooting at you," he once said, "it tends to focus the mind wonderfully." That mindset followed him into Hollywood, where his physical toughness became the stuff of legend. On the set of The Ten Commandments, Heston worked under brutal conditions in the Sinai Desert, enduring heat that sent crew members to the hospital. He pushed through it with stoic resolve, never asking for relief or special treatment. Then came Ben-Hur, and one of the most physically demanding performances in film history. Heston didn't just ride a chariot. He trained for months, learned to control the horses himself, and performed most of the stunts in the iconic race sequence. During one near-fatal moment, he was almost thrown from the chariot during a jump. He got up, dusted off, and kept going. Director William Wyler later said, "Chuck has a physical courage that's quite remarkable. Most stars would have demanded doubles for half of what he did." And it didn't stop there. In The Agony and the Ecstasy, Heston portrayed Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling. To stay true to the role, he spent hours with his arms raised above his head, until muscle spasms and inflammation sent him to the medic. Offered comfort and relief between takes, he declined. He wanted the pain to show on camera. Sophia Loren, who worked with Heston on El Cid, remembered him standing in full armor under the Spanish sun, 70 pounds of metal in suffocating heat. Most actors would have lasted an hour. Charlton did entire days without complaint. He never asked for anything. There was something almost inhuman about his endurance. But Heston's toughness wasn't limited to the physical. He had spine, moral conviction. He marched alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s, at a time when many in Hollywood stayed silent. Decades later, he became a polarizing figure for his vocal defense of gun rights. Love him or not, he never hid from backlash. He faced it. Director Franklin J. Schaffner, who helmed Planet of the Apes, put it simply, "A lot of actors play heroes. Chuck didn't just play them, he embodied them." You believed him, because that strength was real. Charlton Heston wasn't just part of the story. He was the story. Grit, honor, and endurance, both on and off screen. 8. Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes didn't just play Blade, he practically was Blade. A real-life martial arts expert, trained in multiple disciplines, Snipes brought authentic physicality to every role. He could throw a kick or disarm an opponent with a precision that needed no stunt double. But the real tension wasn't always on screen. Behind the scenes, Snipes developed a reputation for intensity, sometimes to a fault. On the set of Blade Trinity, co-stars claimed he barely spoke, communicating through post-it notes signed Blade. Directors found him difficult. Crews found him unpredictable. Then came the fall. Tax evasion charges led to a prison sentence, and suddenly the danger that once electrified his performances became his reality. Yet through it all, Snipes never lost his edge. Even now, his name carries weight, a blade forged in both discipline and defiance. Still sharp, still dangerous. 9. Danny Trejo. Before he was the face of vengeance on screen, Danny Trejo was surviving a war zone far from Hollywood. Born in Los Angeles, he didn't grow up dreaming of fame. He was dodging bullets, battling addiction, and running with gangs. By the time he landed in San Quentin, Trejo was a prison boxing champion with a reputation for being as fearless as he was ferocious. He didn't fake toughness, he survived it. His break came not through auditions, but by chance. Hired to coach an actor on set, his scarred face and unshakable presence stole the room. Directors saw something Hollywood lacked: authentic danger. Trejo didn't need to act. His life was written in scars. From Desperado to Machete, he brought brutal realism to every frame. You believed him because you knew he'd lived it. But what made Trejo stand apart wasn't just his past. It was how he owned it. He turned prison into purpose, addiction into strength, and fear into inspiration. Trejo didn't escape hell. He walked out, fists up, and made it his story. And in doing so, he became one of the most unforgettable tough guys ever to hit the screen. 10. Tom Hardy. In an era of media training and polished personas, Tom Hardy feels like a wild card that slipped through the cracks. Beneath his cool exterior is an unpredictable storm, one built not in acting class, but in the chaos of real life. Before he was Hollywood's go-to for brooding intensity, Hardy was spiraling through London's underworld. Addiction, arrests, and brushes with violence. At just 20, he was caught joyriding in a stolen car, armed and directionless. But instead of vanishing into that chaos, he dragged himself back from the edge, and he didn't leave the darkness behind. He brought it with him. From Bronson to Mad Max, Hardy's characters don't just look dangerous, they feel lived in. Directors call him brilliant. Co-stars call him intense. Behind the scenes, he's known for physical extremes, sudden mood shifts, and a level of commitment that borders on unsettling. But that's what makes him magnetic. Hardy doesn't pretend to be on the edge. He is the edge. Controlled fury, haunted eyes, and a past that lingers in every performance. He's not just acting, he's exercising. If you enjoyed this glimpse into Hollywood's golden age, don't forget to like, subscribe, and step into the next story. There's always more behind the curtain.